The silence in Lebanon was supposed to be the beginning of the end. After months of relentless bombardment and a region teetering on the edge of total collapse, a ceasefire agreement finally emerged. The world breathed a sigh of relief, thinking the gears of war had finally jammed. But in the world of modern conflict, silence on the battlefield is often just a vacuum, waiting to be filled by something far more dangerous. As the dust settled in Beirut, a new, invisible front opened one, where the weapons aren't missiles, but meanings. We are no longer watching a localized conflict between Israel and Hezbollah. We are witnessing a masterful execution of narrative warfare where a single piece of paper is being transformed into a strategic trap. The ceasefire was intended to stabilize a border, but instead, it has become a weapon used to paralyze a superpower and hold the global economy hostage. At this very moment, the center of gravity has shifted from the mountains of southern Lebanon to the narrow, oil-slicked waters of the Strait of Hormuz. The stakes are no longer just about who controls a few kilometers of scorched earth. They are about who controls the story of why the world might go dark tomorrow. To understand how we got here, we have to look at the smoke rising from places the ceasefire was never supposed to cover. Over the past 24 hours, reports began to filter out of the Iranian interior. On the island of Lebanon, home to a critical oil refinery, the air was shattered by explosions. In the central plains of Iran, a drone, unidentified but unmistakable in its profile, was brought down by air defenses. To a casual observer, these might look like the standard tit-for-tat exchanges of a shadow war that has lasted for decades. But to a strategist of cognitive warfare, these events were the spark designed to ignite a pre-planned narrative explosion. Within minutes of these reports, the Iranian messaging machine didn't just claim a violation of their sovereignty, they claimed a violation of the Lebanon ceasefire. This was the pivot. By linking an airstrike in the Persian Gulf to a truce in the Levant, Tehran effectively erased the geographic boundaries of the agreement. They didn't just report a fact, they framed a reality. They told the world that the ceasefire isn't a localized pause in Lebanon, it is a regional iron dome for Iran and its allies. And according to their narrative, Israel has just shattered it. This is where the genius of the Iranian information operation becomes clear. They aren't just playing defense. They are defining the rules of the game while the match is in progress. The Iranian side is now loudly broadcasting a single powerful message to every diplomatic capital from Washington to Beijing. There is no such thing as a partial peace. They have successfully established a package deal narrative, arguing that if Israel continues its operations against Iranian assets or its active defense posture in Lebanon, the entire regional stability is forfeit. By doing this, Iran has seized the moral and legal high ground in the eyes of their domestic audience and much of the global South. They have framed Israel not as a state defending its borders, but as a rogue actor that is incapable of honoring its word. Every Israeli jet that breaks the sound barrier over Beirut and every mysterious explosion in an Iranian facility is now being fed into a global feed as proof of Israeli treachery. It is a brilliant use of perception to create strategic paralysis. If Israel stops its attacks, they allow Iran to rebuild and fortify. If they continue, they are branded as the architects of a global catastrophe. The most potent manifestation of this narrative isn't found in a press release, but in the physical closure of the Strait of Hormuz. This is the ultimate cognitive lever. By keeping this vital artery of world trade shut, Iran is making a very loud statement without firing a single ballistic missile. The message is simple. If Iran does not feel secure within its borders, the world will not feel secure in its prosperity. They are justifying this extreme measure by pointing directly at the reported Israeli incursions. In the world of narrative warfare, it doesn't matter if the drone over central Iran was a reconnaissance mission or a mechanical failure. What matters is that Iran has branded it a breach of the ceasefire. By doing so, they have made the closure of Hormuz look like a defensive necessity rather than an act of economic aggression. They are portraying themselves as the victim who is forced to use the only tool they have to ensure the ceasefire is real and not just on paper. It is a masterclass in psychological pressure. They are betting that the global fear of $5 a gallon gas and a collapsing stock market will force the international community to restrain Israel. But let's look closer at why this narrative is sticking. Israel, in its pursuit of absolute security, has often relied on a policy of calculated ambiguity and overwhelming response. In the past, this served as an effective deterrent. But in today's hyper-connected information environment, that very same posture is being turned against them. Every time Israel strikes a target to prevent a future threat, they provide the visual fuel for the Iranian narrative of aggression. The Iranian side is using these strikes to paint a picture of an Israel that is too big for its boots, a state that believes it can sign a truce with one hand while throwing punches with the other. This framing is incredibly effective because it taps into a growing global fatigue with the endless cycle of violence. When Iran says they want a comprehensive ceasefire, it sounds reasonable to a world that is tired of war. It makes Israel's insistence on the right to strike imminent threats look like a semantic excuse for perpetual conflict. Iran has successfully turned Israel's military strength into a narrative weakness. The impact on decision-making in Washington and Tel Aviv is already becoming visible. We are seeing a classic information-action gap. While military commanders in Israel might see a tactical necessity to take out a drone hub or a refinery, the political leaders are realizing that the narrative cost of such a strike might now be higher than its military value. This is the definition of cognitive warfare. When the enemy's story prevents you from using your weapons, if Israel acts, they risk being blamed for a global oil crisis and the collapse of a hard-won peace in Lebanon. If they don't act, they allow Iran to establish a new status quo where Tehran is untouchable. This is the trap Iran has set. They have created a situation where every Israeli action is interpreted through a lens of bad faith. The perception of the ceasefire has become more important than the text of the ceasefire itself. In this environment, the truth is a secondary concern to the believability of the claim. As we look toward the next few days, we can expect the narrative to escalate in a very specific direction. Iran will likely continue to report minor breaches and suspicious activities within its borders, even if nothing is actually happening. Why? Because each report reinforces the justification for keeping the Strait of Hormuz closed. They are building a case file of Israeli provocations to present to the world. They want to reach a point where the international community doesn't ask if Israel violated the deal, but why Israel is allowed to keep doing it. This is a deliberate attempt to isolate Israel from its Western backers. They are putting the United States in a position where it must choose between supporting its closest allies' right to self-defense or protecting the global economy from an Iranian-induced heart attack. By framing the issue as a breach of ceasefire, Iran is giving the U.S. A diplomatic out to put massive pressure on Tel Aviv to stand down. The danger here is that we are moving toward a point of no return in the cognitive domain. When one side successfully convinces a significant portion of the world that the other side is the sole destabilizer, the path to actual war becomes much shorter. If the narrative of Israeli overreach becomes the dominant global perspective, then any eventual Iranian retaliation will be seen by many as justified defense rather than unprovoked escalation. This is the ultimate goal of strategic messaging, to pre-authorize your own future violence by making your opponent's current actions look intolerable. We are seeing Iran lay the groundwork for a much larger confrontation, all while speaking the language of peace and comprehensive stability. It is a chillingly effective strategy that uses the world's desire for an end to the fighting as a shield for their own regional ambitions. We must also consider the role of social media and the viral nature of battlefield imagery in this narrative war. Every video of a drone being shot down, every grainy clip of a refinery fire, is instantly repurposed into 100 different languages with captions like "Israel breaks the truce." The speed of this information flow is faster than any government's ability to fact-check it. By the time a spokesperson in Tel Aviv or Washington issues a denial, the fact of the violation has already been hardwired into the minds of millions. Iran understands that in the 21st century, the first version of the story to go viral is the version that becomes the history. They are flooding the zone with their interpretation of the ceasefire, leaving Israel to play a desperate and often losing game of catch-up. This isn't just a PR battle, it's an operation to strip Israel of its international legitimacy in real time. Looking ahead, the escalation ladder is no longer just about troop movements. It's about narrative intensity. We might see Iran stage manage more incidents to keep the pressure high. We might see them release leaked documents or intercepted communications that prove Israel never intended to honor the Lebanon deal. On the other side, Israel's only move in the cognitive theater is to try and decouple the Lebanon agreement from the broader Iranian conflict, but that is a hard sell when Iranian-made drones are still flying. The world likes simple stories. An Iran story. One peace for the whole region, or no peace at all, is much simpler than Israel's nuanced "we are at peace here, but at war there" explanation. Simplicity is a force multiplier in information warfare, and right now, Tehran has the advantage. The strategic aftershocks of this shift will be felt for years. If Iran succeeds in making this comprehensive ceasefire narrative the global standard, they will have effectively neutered the Begin Doctrine, Israel's long-standing policy of preventing its enemies from acquiring existential weapons through preemptive strikes. Any future attempt by Israel to stop Iran's nuclear program or its regional expansion will now be framed as a violation of the peace. The ceasefire in Lebanon, which was supposed to bring security to northern Israel, may ironically end up being the very thing that grants Iran a permanent, untouchable sanctuary. This is the ultimate prize in narrative warfare. When you can get your enemy to sign a document that you then use to dismantle their entire strategic doctrine. As we watch the events in the Strait of Hormuz and the skies over Iran, we have to look past the hardware. The real war is being fought in the headlines, the tweets, and the diplomatic cables. It is a war for perception dominance. Iran is betting that they can win this war by making the cost of the truth too expensive for the world to bear. They are betting that we would rather accept their narrative of Israeli aggression than face a world with empty gas tanks and collapsing markets. It is a cold, calculated gamble that leverages human fear against strategic reality. The ceasefire in Lebanon wasn't the end of the conflict. It was the opening of a new chapter where the most dangerous weapon is the one that tells you who the villain is. And as of today, the villain being projected onto the world screen has a very specific face, and it isn't the one sitting in Tehran. The warning for the international community is clear. If we allow narratives to be built on claims without verification, and if we allow perception to dictate the terms of international law, we are inviting a world of permanent instability. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed not because of a physical blockade that cannot be broken, but because of a narrative blockade that no one is yet brave enough to challenge. The world is waiting for a sign that the ceasefire is real, but in doing so, they are letting Iran define what real means. We are entering a period of profound uncertainty, where the line between a tactical strike and a global breach has been blurred beyond recognition. The silence we hoped for in Lebanon has turned out to be the loudest warning we've ever received. The question is no longer when the guns will stop firing, but when we will realize that the story we are being told is the very thing that is keeping the fuse lit. The map of the Middle East is being redrawn, not with ink, but with the shadows of drones and the flicker of refinery fires, all edited into a movie where the ending has already been written by the one holding the camera. Stay vigilant, because in the war of narratives, the first casualty isn't the truth, it's your ability to see who is actually pulling the trigger.